Hello everybody, my name's Colin Mason. I'm one of the vets that works for SRUC Veterinary Services and I'm based down in Dumfries in southwest Scotland. So we're speaking today on a beautiful cold winter's day in the middle of January. Some of the things that we've been seeing so far this year, we're pretty busy on the cattle side looking at cases of bovine abortion at the moment. As the suckler herd gets towards calving, we're getting into the sort of last third of the pregnancies for a lot of these cows, so that's very often where we start to see the problems. And also in this area we have quite a lot of seasonal calving dairy herds as well that are starting calving at the end of January, beginning of February. So we're starting to see a cluster of late embryo losses and abortions with those as well. So we're really investigating quite a few of those. We're seeing the usual mix of things that we see, and particularly in the suckler herds, one of the big risks at this time of year is feed-borne and environmental causes. So bacteria in particular, possibly fungi or yeasts as well, that come from the silage and possibly come from the water troughs as well. And that's quite a big risk at this time of year. So one of the things to really think about for anybody with cows approaching calving, seasonally calving herds with cows in the last third of the pregnancy now, is to make sure that we feed them the best quality silage we've got, particularly by way of preservation, and to be particularly careful about areas of mold contamination, areas on the edges of clamps, the fronts and sides of clamps, or on the edges of bales that look like they might be contaminated, because we do see particular risks with these sorts of bugs at this time of year. So that's one to watch out for and to be aware of from a prevention point of view for the next few months as we approach calving. It's interesting as well when we talk about the silages. I've been speaking to some of my SAC consulting colleagues about the silage analysis they've got this year, and I think one of the main take-home messages for me is it's very, very variable. Some people have made some fantastic silage, high dry matter, high energy, high protein. Others, I guess, the opposite of that. And one of the markers for possible risk from an abortion point of view would be the ash content of the silage. So if it's particularly high ash content, it does tend to suggest that there may be quite a bit of soil contamination at the time that the silage was made, and that poses a potential risk as well. So actually knowing the analysis of your silage, even at this stage of the year, knowing what it is and what the potential risks of it are really, really important. I think the other thing to mention in terms of cattle abortions is, particularly at this stage of the pregnancy, towards the end of the pregnancy with suckler cows, they shouldn't be occurring. They're not normal. And the expectation is that the further a cow gets into her pregnancy, the more stable that fetus is and the more likely it is to go to term. So if you are getting problems, I think it is really, really important to investigate them, to find out what the cause is. So speak to your vet or speak to us at SRUC Vet Services about getting them investigated. And that really, really helps with the health planning process in terms of trying to manage these risks and plan for them going forwards. And knowing what the causes are really, really helps. I think the other thing just to point out as well is if we find nothing and we don't find an infectious cause, that's also really, really good news in that if we screen these potential risky cases and we find no evidence of infectious disease, then that's a really good outcome for the farm, and it also helps inform the health planning process as well. So I would really suggest a zero tolerance policy of anything that calves early, aborts at this late stage. Get in touch with your vet and get them investigated, because it's really important to know what's going on. One quick message right now, it's below 0 degrees out here right now, even though the sun's shining. So it's a beautiful winter's day, and one of the immediate challenges right now with the cold weather to think about will be water supply, both for cattle and sheep outside and also cattle and sheep inside. We have seen a couple of issues where water supply has been completely frozen. Obviously farmers have got a lot of work on their plates at the moment in making sure that all the water troughs and all the water supplies are defrosted and the water is flowing. And one of the risks that does occur, thankfully very, very rarely, but we do see it occasionally, and we've seen it already this year, is where water supply has been interrupted to cattle or sheep. It's then returned, and thirsty animals drink really, really quickly. And that can actually, in its most extreme form, actually cause sheep or cattle to be quite ill, to show nervous signs, and the rapid drinking of a lot of water can actually cause nervous signs in these animals. So just be aware of it, and the main thing is the common sense stuff that all farmers are doing, which is to try and maintain water supply as much as possible, wherever possible, particularly in this cold weather. So that's one thing to think about. The other one is obviously for young animals, and I'm thinking particularly about dairy calves here, young dairy calves. So a newborn dairy calf at this time of year is particularly susceptible to the cold weather. What we call the lower critical temperature for these calves, which is the temperature below which they have to use up energy to keep warm, is actually 15 degrees for a newborn dairy calf. So we're way below that at the moment. Right now we're probably about 20 degrees below that. So keeping these calves warm is absolutely critical to keep them healthy at the moment. So we're going to need to supply heat to do that. So potentially heat lamps, wearing calf jackets, ensuring that they're bedded in really, really deep straw so they can dig deep into the straw and nest in the straw, trying to find sites where they're out of the wind, and ensuring that they're not lying up against cold concrete, so possibly insulating walls of the sheds with straw to keep them warm. We need to keep the air quality good, we need to keep air flowing above the height of these calves, but we really, really need to keep them warm at the moment because they're going to be below their lower critical temperature all the time. So real things to focus on, and that'll be quite relevant for the next few weeks and months, given that we're only in January. So just following on from the cattle abortion stuff, obviously as we are now in mid-January, we're starting into the early lambing season for the low-ground sheep flocks around here. And the same would apply there as well, in that if we're getting late-term, late pregnancy abortions and embryo losses, is don't hesitate to get those investigated, to find out what the infectious causes are, if indeed they are an infectious cause, so that we can plan forward, manage that for this year's lambing, reduce the risks if you've got other groups of sheep that are lambing at the moment or are about to lamb, and also then plan forward for next year in terms of how we're going to manage these conditions and reduce the degree of embryo loss for our sheep flocks as things go through. So important to consider that one. The other thing at this time of year as well, there's a lot of sheep being scanned. So the sort of late March and moving into the April lambing flocks are going through scans. So again, if depending on your scan results, most of them have been pretty good around here so far, but if you're having a slightly increase in barren rate, is again, speak to your vet about getting that investigated. Could there be an infectious cause? Could there be a nutritional cause? Could there be a management cause? But it would be worthwhile looking at some barren ewes, considering what the reasons are for them not being in lamb, and then how we're going to manage that going forward. It's also a key point in the sort of sheep's year scanning time, so it's a key time for looking at ewe body condition. How have they got through the autumn and early winter so far? How are they looking in terms of body condition, and how we best manage that going forward? So again, if we've got a lot of lean ewes, it's worthwhile thinking about potential causes there. Could there be some of the iceberg diseases that are there, and PM examination can really help with that. The other one that is talked about a lot at the moment is fluke risk. And I think probably my main summary on liver fluke is that the risk is moderate and late, and we would expect potentially to see some issues with liver fluke in the coming weeks, just because of the warmer, wetter weather we've had, particularly in the south of Scotland through the tail end of 2023. So lots to think about there in terms of embryo loss, barren rates, abortion in cattle, abortion in sheep, liver fluke risk, and managing forages to the best of your ability with the forages that you have to feed both late pregnant cows and also late pregnant sheep as well, the highest quality forage that you've got on the farm right now. Thanks very much for watching and listening. If you have any more queries, SRUC Veterinary Services works as part of a team with your vets. So speak to your vet or speak to us about any animal health queries that you might have, and the sort of veterinary team will help try and work out what's best to do. So thanks very much.